Greetings and welcome to the 8th episode of Cities of Cyrodiil, where we take a look at a number of town, village and city mods to help populate the decidedly underpopulated landscapes of the capital province of Cyrodiil. And as always, I'm your host, Dark Elf Guy, and today we have another 3 town and city mods for your viewing pleasure. And we're actually going to be taking a look at a few more town expansion mods in today's episode, as opposed to just looking at new settlements like we usually do. And these new town expansions really help to breathe some new life into Cyrodiil's major cities. And of course, you can find down the links to all the mods that we'll be looking at today down in the video description below. So let's just go ahead and get sorted with our popular town mod of the month. And this time around, we have MTC Bravil, River Shack and Village by Nernie. And now, before we get too far into the showcase here, it should be mentioned that we're looking at the standalone version of MTC Bravil, River Shack and Village in today's video. But it has also been implemented into other larger mods like Real Better Cities and Open Better Cities. So if you already have, one of those mods installed, I believe you technically already have this town expansion included in those mod packages. But anyway, back to the showcase here. This is a fairly sizable town expansion to Bravil, adding a new shack district right outside the city gates with a number of buildings, walkways just loosely constructed along this river here. And I just have to say, I really love the design of this expansion to Bravil here. It fits with the style and sort of impoverished nature of the city almost perfectly. And since this district is built along the steep sides of the river here, there's just a ton of verticality in the design, which, as you guys know, I'm an absolute sucker for verticality in city design. And just flying through the town expansion here, there's not a huge number of buildings added here. I'd say this whole expansion is about half a dozen buildings in total. But there's a lot of that rundown feeling to really make this feel like a natural, organic, and atmospheric extension of the city here, with lots of clutter and detritus that you might expect from a lower-class neighborhood such as this. And now, while most of the city's expansion is focused along the waterway, you'll find a couple of makeshift buildings up closer to the main road, going around Bravil, including a small bakery where you can find a few tasty treats, and a tavern just down the way here, where the local residents go to forget their problems at the bottom of a flask of mead or something. And taking a look at the map here, this new expansion is basically along the northern border of Bravil, following the river pretty much, and to a lesser extent the main road, just north of town. And now we're going to explore some of the new interiors included in this expansion, starting with the local pub and tavern, where you'll find a number of NPCs just, drinking their woes away. And this is a rather darkly lit, but, atmospheric place to stop in at after the end of a long day, and just enjoy a nice warm, or if you prefer, a cold brew, if you so desire. And there's also a fellow in here who can sell you a nearby shack. He has a bit of a story about why he, wants to up and sell, namely so you can spend more time in the tavern here, and you can buy the shack from him for a mere 200 gold. And should you choose to accept, you'll find the shack right down the road here, and it really isn't much to look at, just a single room, built entirely in the exterior world space with a number of windows looking outside. And it is, really quite scenic in a way. There's not much in here though, just a bed, some shelves to store your stuff, and a table for you to, take your meals really. And just basically the bare necessities of life. But if you want to live in a downtrodden shack, it's a really nice place to stay. And to take a look at just a couple more interiors here, next we have a junk shop, which is a rather cluttered riverfront store, full of a variety of odds and ends, half of which are probably useless in any, practical sense. And the other half are of questionable value, I would say. Still, there's some interesting things for sale here, including various bits of armor, decorative items, and also a new book series that appears to be added by this mod. And there's also a small alchemy shop here, where you'll find a ton of basic ingredients for sale. And again, the interiors included here are rather nicely dark and atmospheric, with a fair amount of detail. And though we won't be showing them off here, there's also 2 more shops that we'll be skipping over here, including a clothing shop and a cobbler shop. And all in all, this is a really beautiful, in a, rundown sort of way, expansion to the city of Bravil, adding about half a dozen buildings to the outer part of the city here, and making for a natural and organic extension of Bravil's poverty. There's a number of shops along here as well, including a bakery, tavern, clothing shop, junk shop, and an alchemy shop to provide a lot of convenience features, and there's even a small rundown shack you can purchase as a player home. This expansion doesn't have a map marker though, and probably doesn't really need one since the map marker for the stables here takes you right to it anyway. And really this is just a very cool and atmospheric city expansion that I'd really highly recommend checking out. Next up, we have our new town mod of the month, and for today's episode, we have Cheydinhal Dunmer by MsFrankenstein. And this is sort of another town expansion mod, except to my mind, it's also more of a town overhaul mod that also happens to expand the city with a few more buildings and details, and things of that nature. And before we start, it should be mentioned that this mod is not compatible with better cities, in case you were wondering about that. And now with that out of the way, Cheydinhal aims to make the easternmost city of Cyrodiil a bit more, Dunmer themed, by adding a greater variety of flora and plant life, including those Cheydinhal-style giant mushrooms to the city streets and gardens of Cheydinhal, as well as a ton of traditional Dunmer drinks and just a general facelift of the entire city pretty much. We're going to just, fly around the city for a bit here, since the author has stated that the intended effect was to make the city streets feel a bit more overgrown. And you'll also notice that we went by an outdoor cafe, which is another, sort of new addition to the city here, and a rather scenic one at that, with some, really amazing views of the town as you sit and drink your Flynn or Grief. But aside from that, you'll find quite a few more trees lining the streets of Cheydinhal, including some of these pink-flowered ones that I believe are originally from the realms of Oblivion. And there's also just a lot more plant life in general, and I absolutely love this sort of, overgrown effect that all these trees, mushrooms, bushes, and other bits of wildlife add to the city. It really makes Cheydinhal feel a bit more like my native homeland of Morrowind, which was, of course, exactly what the author was going for, and I think they achieved their goals quite nicely here. Personally, Cheydinhal has always been one of my favourite cities in vanilla Oblivion. The iconic and unique architecture, combined with the sort of idyllic layout of the town here, makes it a fun place to explore. And of course, the city being home to the Dark Brotherhood certainly, doesn't hurt matters any. But going back to the mod here, you'll find a couple of new areas added to Cheydinhal, including some new residential dwellings added along the shores of the river that goes through town here, and each of these buildings is just really nicely detailed. I believe in vanilla Oblivion, this was largely just an open space, and now it actually has a bit of a purpose with, houses, scenic walkways, and some really dynamic terrain changes with cliffs, trees, and lots of flowers, of course. And this isn't a huge expansion on Cheydinhal, though. I believe this mod only adds about 4 new buildings, including 3 houses and 1 new shop, and really they all blend in quite nicely with the rest of town. You almost can't even tell the difference, well, aside from the richly detailed and overgrown terrain that is. And now in addition to the visual upgrades to the town and, the expanded buildings and all that, this mod also adds new items to the existing buildings, namely more Dunmer-style drinks, so you'll find Morrowind classics like Grief and Flynn in a variety of homes and shops here. And since this is just an overhaul and expansion of Cheydinhal, we're going to, skip over the map section here, since I'm pretty sure, almost everyone knows where Cheydinhal is already. And now before we take a look at some of the new interiors here, you can find a drink cart here outside by the cafe, where you can buy a variety of these Morrowind-style drinks if you so desire. And moving on, the first interior we're going to be looking at here is the new shop added near the front gate of the city. A magic and alchemy shop where you can buy various potions, ingredients, books, soul gems, and other magic-related items, including a few things unique specifically to Morrowind. You can see the shopkeeper's inventory here, and she has a fair number of, goods for sale, as well as over 1,000 gold to barter with, which is pretty high for Oblivion. And real quick, I also wanted to check out one of the new houses here, and these are largely smaller residences, like this one-room cottage, without, really too much to really see, but a few items to steal if you're into that kind of thing. And overall, this is just a really nice overhaul of Cheydinhal that just expands and, enhances the city's natural Dunmer-style beauty. In addition to adding a lot more detail and flora to the city streets, it also adds 4 new buildings, including one magic shop with a variety of alchemical and enchanting-related goods for sale, making it a rather nice convenience feature. It also has a street vendor that sells Dunmer drinks, and if you're, craving a slice of Morrowind and Oblivion, this is a really great mod to check out, and I'd certainly recommend it. And finally, for our underrated town mod of the month, we have Suliin Village by Jagnot and Sacryn. And now I don't know if this is really an underrated mod or not. It was originally posted to the Oblivion real estate website in response to a modding competition, but of course, like so many older modding websites, the Oblivion real estate website has since disappeared, along with the original records covering things like downloads and mod popularity. All I know is that Imhan123 uploaded it to the Nexus in 2012, and since then it has remained a relatively obscure and underrated town mod on the Nexus, hence why we're covering it today. And despite the relatively underrated status of this mod, it is a really scenic and beautiful town, and along the border between Cyrodiil and elsewhere, using a mix of Iliad and Cheydinhal style architecture. The entire town sits pretty much on top of a series of steep hills and mountains just to the west of the city of Bravil, with a lake right in the middle of town that drains down via a series of cascading waterfalls to the very same river that we saw earlier during our Bravil town mod. And to say the least, this is an incredibly scenic area with some unparalleled views of the Nernie Basin, and the city is ideally pitched to view a large chunk of south-central Cyrodiil, and with a number of steep and sloping streets, you really get a lot of this, that sense of verticality that I love so much in city and town design. And now, not only is this a really beautiful looking town, but it's also a fairly sizable one as well, though it does appear slightly larger than it actually is due to just how spread out the entire village is, covering a fairly sizable area. But anyway, there's about 7 or 8 of these Cheydinhal style buildings here, including one chapel hidden off to the side, and the entire village is just sort of interspersed with these Iliad ruins, though I don't believe there's actually any Iliad interiors here, and in comparison, this village is slightly larger than the average small town that you see around Cyrodiil, and it does have a tavern, shop, and a player home for you to check out, but more on that in a bit. And while this is principally speaking a town mod, there's also been a pretty massive landscape overhaul here as well, with the authors building a series of lakes and waterfalls that go all the way up this mountain here, and far past the original township. And now this does potentially pose a bit of a compatibility issue if you're using any big Elsevier mods that expand on Cyrodiil's neighboring province, but luckily there's a number of compatibility patches included with the mod's main download, including compatibility with unique landscapes and better cities, so you should be able to play this with just about everything. Also, I just once again have to point out the amazing views up here. There's even a special viewing platform that allows you to overlook the Nernie Basin, Bravil, and the village down below. And it really is just fantastic, especially in the evening hours when the sun is going down. It's just an absolutely spectacular sight. But we're not going to linger here, because we still have a fair bit of this mod to showcase here. And there's one more major area I need to show you guys, and that's the lake at the top of the mountain here, right above the village that drains through a series of waterfalls down to the town below and into the river that goes past Bravil. And this is a really large and scenic area, full of beautiful flowers and trees, and while there's not really much here in terms of actual content, this is just a really cool and relaxing lake to stop by at and, you know, take the edge off, exploring these beautiful woodlands without any risk of running into monsters or dangerous wildlife. And now before we take a look at some of the interiors here, let's just pull up the map real quick, and you'll see that Suliin Village actually has 3 map markers in total, including one that takes you to the town entrance, one for the village itself, and one for the lakes at the top of the mountain here. And it really is quite spread out, but it's not too far away from Bravil really, just a short and scenic walk I'd say. And now this first interior that we'll be looking at here is a sort of combined tavern and shop, really the primary place to find goods for sale in the entire village, with a tavern down by the main floor, with a couple of beds on the lower area here, a pub with seating on the 2nd floor, and an actual shopping area with a merchant's vendor up on the top floor to provide a variety of services. And this merchant here is a general trader, so he has a little bit of everything, including arms and armor, books, ingredients, and other odds and ends. And he also has about 500 bartering gold. And next we're going to stop by one of the residential houses here. And these are all, you know, pretty much upper and middle class dwellings, with a fair number of furnishings, decorations, and each of these homes is uniquely detailed, which is a nice bonus, plus fairly cozy, though this is obviously an NPC-owned house that we're looking at here. And now there is one more service available here. The local chapel has a priest that also provides some enchanting services, and also buys and sells a variety of items. And this is also where you can buy a deed to the local player house, which will set you back about 16,000 septims or so, which is, you know, moderately but not overly expensive. And taking a look at the player home here, this abode has a rather interesting layout, with the master bedroom being right off the foyer. And you know, I don't think I've ever actually seen a house layout like this before. It is a bit odd, but regardless, this is a rather cozy house with a dining room on the other side of the foyer here. And upstairs, there's a lounge with a couch and a few bookshelves and the like. And for the most part, this home comes pre-decorated already, with a fair amount of clutter on most of the surfaces in here. So you'll have to, you know, move a few things if you want to redecorate. And this last room up here is a study, with a proper desk, some alchemical equipment to the side, and some more, comfy looking seats to lounge about in. And overall, this is just a really beautiful mid-sized village built in the mountains along the Cyrodiil border, and it has a lot going for it really, from absolutely scenic and breathtaking vistas, to some shops and a tavern for, convenient features, a player home that you can purchase, some lovely landscaping with a hiking trail that you can explore, and of course multiple map markers for just getting around. And if you'd like an additional scenic little town to visit, and also possibly live in, I'd really highly recommend giving this one a try. And that wraps up this episode of Cities of Cyrodiil. As always, you'll find down the links down below. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.